You're listening to the Perth Property Show, Australia's only weekly property podcast by West Australian experts for West Australian listeners. Catch your latest episode every Monday at 7 a.m.
G'day guys, Trent Fleskins here from the Perth Property Show. We've got a cracking episode coming up. Let's get straight into it. Today we're talking Money Management 101, and to help us with that conversation, we've got Kieran McErlean from Provident Financial Services. How you going, Kieran?
Very good, Trent. Thank you for having me.
Kieran, thanks for coming in. I know we've got to say a couple of quick words just to cover off all bases.
We do.
You're an Associate Financial Planner for Paul Carter Pty Ltd, trading as Provident Financial Services, and you're an authorised representative of AMP Financial Planning. And we just got to remind everyone that this segment will just be general advice only and that it's not intended as personal recommendations. Everyone should consider if the information suits their circumstances. Kieran, let's get straight into it. I want to talk on a really basic level today, how we're going to be able to manage our funds on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, whatever works for us, especially if we've personally found that finances, money, numbers really hasn't been a strong suit for us as a family unit.
It's a really good point. I think that anything that you're particularly interested in, you're going to pay more attention to. The days of telling people of breaking down their complete budget and spending habits on a day-to-day basis may be a little bit out of the picture for a lot of people. Might even be a little bit overwhelming, but if you can give yourself the small wins and seeing things add up, I think that's where I've seen a lot of interest develop in people. And what I mean, for example, is it could be a case that you look at your monthly direct debits for your insurances, for your phone bill, anything that you would normally spend on a routine basis, and challenge yourself to see how you can save in what those areas are for the same or similar service. And then sometimes it might only seem it's only $5, $10 a month here or there, but if you can bring up an Excel sheet or have a record and just jot down those savings, $5, $10 for each month, and then you work out how much you are saving per month or per year, it really starts to...
That can become a holiday.
Exactly. And that's flights to Africa or America, and then
Bali
you've got something
even.
on it.
You know, it's a difference between being stuck in Perth for the year or actually having that extra couple of grand and being able to take the family on a quick trip somewhere. Yeah. And that's the first point we want to understand is it's about setting goals.
Absolutely, because without having something in mind or something to work towards, it's very difficult. It's difficult to save money without a goal or an objective in mind.
Because it's a daily choice, isn't it? You know, that $5 coffee 5 times a week is $25 a week. It's $100 a month. There's a couple of flights to Asia, going out quickly to Macca's or whatnot. There's daily choices that on a daily basis, on an individual basis, don't seem like much. But then at the end of the day, if that becomes a behaviour, that's the difference between you and your family staying in for Christmas this year and your next door neighbours who are in the same situation as you having that money in the bank.
You're right. It all adds up. We all have friends of our similar age that we know when they are going travelling because they hold themselves back from some of the spending that they're doing throughout the week or throughout the weekend. And you can see that you can see when someone's got an objective there straight away, or they might be saving for a house deposit. When you've got that goal there or that idea, everything else just seems to fall into place, and you find that just naturally you'll get your brain working. You'll start thinking of different ways to save money or potentially make money.
I think the most important part of that goal is setting a financial number to it. Whilst there is obviously an objective to having that goal, it isn't saving for a holiday. That shouldn't be the goal. It should be saving $5,000 for the holiday, or $50,000 for the deposit, or $15,000 for a new car. There needs to be a level of specifics about it so that we can then reverse engineer that back to when do we need the goal? And therefore, on a monthly basis or a weekly basis, what do we need to put away to get there?
That's right. And I think that taking away that self-motivation and relying on habit is a much better and important way to save for a goal, because the less you're having to think about decisions like that, the better it is. So what I mean by that is, for example, if you're getting paid fortnightly or on a monthly salary, if you were to allocate a percentage of that money into a savings account, then you're living below your means essentially with what you've got left in your bank account to spend. So, of course, everyone's situation, circumstance is different, but I think if you can get into the habit of always saving something towards something that's significant, I think it gives people a lot of purpose as well. It gives them a goal, and to chip away at a goal that seems maybe too big to begin with, but over time you're starting to knock it down, or you can see it actually building up and balancing, getting closer to it. It's very satisfying,
Yeah, and that moves to our next point, I think, is you referenced how much we're putting away, right? And how we figure that out. Well, I think to be able to figure that out, we need to know how much we can put away. There's no point saying I'm going to put away 30% of my income or $600 a month or whatever it is, if you actually get to the end of the month and realize that that's just not a reality even when you try it. So I think setting that actual, as you referenced before as well, an Excel spreadsheet, getting a budget together where you've listed out on all the rows, all your income sources, and then all your expenses, totaling them up on a monthly basis amongst the columns, and then being able to track how much do I plan to have in disposable income left over for fun and for savings. And that gives you a chance to then decide how much you want to save and how much you want to spend.
I think you've got to be realistic with yourself too, because you've got to have a balance. You've got to have a balance in life.
You still have to enjoy your life. Otherwise, that goal will fall away. It just won't seem worthwhile.
That's right.
So we've got the goal. We've got the Excel spreadsheet up and running. We're checking that every month to make sure that it's in line with our expectations. We're going through the bank statements to make sure we understand what we are actually spending and where we can cut away a little bit more. The next step is really starting to understand what we're going to do with that money.
Yeah. Once you get the basics right and you get a handle of your own finances, it can be quite empowering as well, because it gives you a lot of opportunity. You're making the choices, what you're saving towards or what your goal is. I mean, everyone is completely different.
We've just spoken about consumerist goals just now, but what we want to be talking about is saving to invest, so that at some point in the future, because of a number of factors, we've got a lot more than just that hourly saving rate. And I think the first point there is investing in yourself and educating yourself as to what would be the best way to invest your money in.
That is the most important lesson, because let's say if I wanted to be a chef or someone told me I had to cook in front of 200 people, I wouldn't just jump in there without doing any research or any reading or any experience or any practice first. For something like that, you'd want to build up your skill set and your experiences before you went into it, before you chose what you were going to serve. And I think that it's almost underestimated how much opportunity our own financial circumstances and our own financial planning essentially has on our entire life. And if you can invest in yourself first, then in life you will avoid the pitfalls or the mistakes. Someone will come to you and go, oh, look, I've got this really good idea, like we're all going to make a whole lot of money. Or it could be, look, we're looking to invest in this, or we shouldn't invest in that. If you're armed with the education and the experience of being well read and understand even just the basics of financials and returns, then you're arming yourself with opportunity to avoid those losses. And as people like Warren Buffett say, rule number 1 is don't lose any money. Rule number 2 is don't lose any money. I think once you understand the power of compounding interest, and that's where money's working for you instead of you working for money, your world just completely changes, because then you realize that you can use time in your advantage to
takes patience though, doesn't it? It
does.
The whole point of compounding interest is you're not going to see it in the first couple of years.
No, and it's exponential. So the smallest growth is in those first years. I'm someone who likes to look forward, and sometimes I look too far forward, as my partner might complain. But if you're even to look online as motivation to see how compounding interest works, there's great compounding calculators out there, and I know that even the Australian government on Money Smart has one. You can put in what your savings amount is, and then you can play around with the different inputs. You can say, right, what does the situation look when I'm 60 years old or 40 years old if I'm contributing $1,000 a month and it's compounding it, whatever percentage you put in there. So you might say, right, look, I'm going to put in the percentage I'm currently getting in my bank account, as opposed to the Australian stock market average.
Or a managed fund.
Yeah.
Or the average of a property investment.
Property growth. Yeah. And then to look at that over time, and then you'll see at the end of the bar graph, the money's being made off that compounding effect. And it is extraordinary, and it's exponential and
very passive.
It is.
As long as, one, you've got the right people helping you, and we can talk about that later. This definitely isn't a pitch chat here like always. But one thing I really want to clear up is when we're talking about investing in yourself, we're definitely not talking about spending $5,000 on weekend programs from roadshow workshops from people coming in from America or the East Coast or whatever, saying, come over to this workshop and we'll teach you how to be millionaires.
Yeah.
That's not investing in your education. That's being sold a product. It's really about getting the right people around you. Yes. We've all got mates who are really bad with money and really good with money, and just having those conversations about what they're doing, what they're reading. You're a bit of a finance nerd, Kieran. What are you reading at the moment, or what have you read that you've found really important to just getting some good basics from the get-go?
I had never been a big reader, so I was lacking in probably the information that I was really interested in. And when I mean reading, I enjoy reading articles, but I couldn't really find the time to sit down and read book after book after book. And I was envious or jealous of the people that could just sit down and read these books. So to access the information and finding a way to educate yourself, however you work best, because everyone's different, is quite important. And for me, my world kind of opened up when I started listening to audiobooks.
Well, there you go. So there are a number of good quality finance podcasts out there.
Yeah, I'm talking globally as well. Of course, there's going to be some differences when you're comparing Australian finances with America or Europe or whatever the case may be. But I'm a big fan of books because if someone has put their life's work into 400 pages or whatever it's going to be, and you're paying for that product, you can assume that there's going to be some quality. There's going to be some
diligence,
correct,
integrity.
Yes.
Yep.
So I think it all comes back to these habits. And if you can try, and everyone struggles with it and everyone always will, but if you can try and fit these habits into daily, weekly, monthly routine and then set yourself those goals. I try and read a book a week. And when I mean read, I listen to an audiobook in the car. And it's simple as instead of me listening to the radio on the way to work and on the way home, I listen to half an hour of an audiobook on the way to work and half an hour on the way home. And usually, by the weekend's up, I'll finish a book a week.
That's nearly groundbreaking in terms of how normal people can access information without it being a chore.
Yeah.
And that's only come on in the last few years, really, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, this podcast is exactly the same thing. You know, people listen to this in the car, on the train, at work, at night. You don't have to be sitting there, turning a page.
No,
which can be...
You can do it when you're watering the garden or washing the cars. As I do. And I think the manner that you absorb that information best is what people to look at. But once you've learned something, you never regret learning it. So if you can learn as much about whatever you're interested in, for me personally, it is and has been for a very long time, personal finances and just getting around the distraction of noise and news and what's right and what's wrong and what's the best option and coming to your own conclusions. That's when I come back to that point of once you're educated and, someone comes along and says, I've got this idea, you're armed with information. And of course, there probably is no better way of learning than learning yourself and making those mistakes.
And learning by doing.
Yeah.
As long as it's you're not selling the farm to do so.
Yeah, that's right.
I think this leads into that last point. I always want to make sure that before I'm hiring a professional, I'm learning enough not to do what they do, but to know how to make sure that what they're doing is probably the right idea, or if they're doing it efficiently enough or well enough.
Yeah.
I think that last point I want to talk about is simply getting a good team of financial savvy experts around you.
Yes.
To be able to make good decisions. And we're going to touch briefly, because we've obviously got another episode talking about what makes a good financial planner. Just briefly on what are financial planners doing in this situation, and when do you need one, when do you probably not need one?
Most importantly, when you're choosing any kind of professional service, you want to get along with the person that you're building the relationship with. That's only going to benefit both people. If you've met someone, whether it's an accountant or a financial planner, a broker, a real estate agent, whatever it is, I think that the most important thing is that you trust that person and then
you share values.
Yeah, share values. You can speak openly and you can speak honestly with that person. If you're not happy with something, you know that you're both on the same level playing field, that no one's going to get offended. You can ask those tricky questions you may not be able to, or you may not feel comfortable asking someone else. But I think that unfortunately we live in a world, and especially in Australia, where most people get their financial advice, which sets up their entire life,
from the parents.
Yeah, or around the barbecue.
Oh, yeah, friends and family. Yep.
I find this whole concept very intriguing because the talk of money and investments is such a taboo topic. So it's almost like you go to school, right? And you're sent off to school by your parents, and your parents are expecting the fees that they pay at school to educate you for life. So your parents are leaving this responsibility to the school, but the school is kind of leaving the responsibility to the parents to teach the money management and financial intelligence that is so important. And in a lot of people's families or circumstances, talking about money is seen as a taboo subject. It's not that often that a lot of families will sit around with children and talk about money at the dinner table. And I guess, unfortunately, because it's not that open, honest conversation at all times, people are seeking other alternatives to find the education or the information. And that's where people get trapped. Setting yourself up correctly and meeting those correct professionals that you get along with. And I would say for everything, a good gym coach who knows you, an accountant that you trust and who knows you personally.
Clearly just cares about the outcome and isn't just processing you like a number.
Exactly.
That's easy enough to find out. We may not be particularly savvy on everything we hire our professionals to do for us.
Yes.
But one thing we should all be able to do is understand when someone has our best interests at heart and we're getting ethics and value for the time and the money that we're putting in.
Yeah, that's right.
There really is a bit of a process here. It's not just leaving this episode and going straight to the first financial planner you see on Facebook or whatnot. I think it starts from understanding your own finances first.
Yeah.
Getting back to basics, doing some work on Excel, for example, or on the back of a piece of paper, or whatever it is, to understand what your situation is.
And what you want.
What your goals are, exactly.
What you're working towards.
Whether you think you can make them and readjusting them. Educating yourself to be able to then figure out what you want from a professional, what you need, what gaps you have, and then hiring a professional, if you believe, and only if you believe that you're going to get value out of it at the end of the day.
And comparing to what you understand value. Some people might be seeking the professional services of someone like a financial planner as a once-off. Some people want an ongoing relationship, and that the ongoing relationship is where it's customizable as well, depending on budget, depending on what the client needs, how comprehensive the advice piece is. They might want to visit and see and have a one-on-one meeting with a financial planner once a year, twice a year, once every 3 years. It's completely circumstantial to that person and their objectives and their goals. But I think most importantly, if people work out what they want, everything else falls into place, and then you can seek those professional services.
Kieran, thanks a lot for your time. Hopefully have you in again.
Thanks, Trent. Anytime.
Okay, so for today's Suburb Spotlight, we are talking Forrestfield, and of course, the only person I want to speak to with regards to this suburb is Mr. Forrestfield. It is Glen Newland from Professionals. Glen, thanks for coming in.
Hey, Trent. Thanks for having me, mate.
Glen, Forrestfield is, for me, a sleeping giant. I've been saying this for a year and a half now at our business updates. We've been speaking about your suburb for a while and waiting for things to kick off in the mainstream. And I would suggest it probably hasn't gotten the kudos it probably deserves at this point. Can we talk about the history of Forrestfield, why it's a sleeping giant in the first place, and how things are moving into today, what sort of people are buying in Forrestfield?
Yeah, Trent, a little bit of history about Forrestfield is I came from the top of the hills, and I suppose Forrestfield was one of the suburbs where there was a few more rentals, there was a bit more state housing through Forrestfield. I don't know, it was not such a desirable suburb. Location's always been great, but I suppose just not many people using it. It was more of a first home buyer, sort of get in there, buy an investment property, kind of get out sort of suburb.
30 years ago, it wasn't really close to much, was it?
No, it wasn't. And now you look at the coastline, how far the suburbs stretch up and down the coast, which I understand. We're in Perth, it's a beach town, but Forrestfield is 16k from the city. We've got a train line coming there. Something that people don't realise about Forrestfield as well is that the traffic, when you go east from the city, it's just, when you get to Forrestfield, it kind of stops.
Yes.
Because once you get past Forrestfield, you're getting into half acres, quarter acres, hectares, and then farming land.
Yeah.
So you really don't suffer all that traffic that they do if you're going north or south from the city.
I guess you've benefited a lot from the Gateway WA operations that have finished up now through Tonkin Highway, Reed Highway, Roe Highway. Things must be a lot quicker to get back home from the city.
I live in Forrestfield, Trent, and we used to go to Vic Park a lot for dinner. Getting through that section near the airport of Tonkin Highway, that was just how long's a piece of string. On each day, it could take you 20 minutes, 25 minutes just to get through that section of Tonkin. Now, even in peak hour traffic, I can get from Vic Park to Forrestfield in 13 minutes, and you're only hitting one set of traffic lights the whole way. And it's free-flowing the whole way. It's
Big
amazing.
Difference. Big difference. And I guess we'll talk about it later, but with the airport link coming through, that suburb is going to be as accessible as any other as well. Before I interrupted you, we touched on the history of Forrestfield. Give us some more of that background and how it's changed over the last 3-4 decades.
Well, one of the main things that did happen is that State Housing gave me a call a few years back and said, hey, look, we're going to sell a whole bunch of houses in Forrestfield. They sent through a list of 23 houses. Now, they were probably some of the houses that needed to be moved on. A few of them were just the ones in the suburb that you sort of drive by and you think, oh, it would be nicer suburb if that wasn't there. So a lot of that has happened. So I think there was about 18 of them that they'd already moved on. Now, that makes a big difference to a suburb. When you take 18 properties and look, they were just not desirable places.
Yeah,
so
one house can ruin a street, and if that's 18 streets...
Yeah, that's exactly right. They were condensed into one sort of area, which was the old side of Forrestfield. So all of these properties were probably in 1/3 of Forrestfield as well.
Near Hartfield?
Yes.
Sort of part, yeah.
Through Hartfield, so some of the properties, some of the streets, Adjun Court Drive, Moira. There was one called Guava, which was quite condensed with them as well. So they've all kind of been moved on. Those properties have either been knocked over and people have chopped up the blocks now, or they've renovated the front house and they're maybe battle axing them. And some people are just holding on to them as well because they picked them up for a steal.
Yeah, and that is where that subdivision potential really is seeing some difference happening to the area, and we can talk about that as well. What sort of buyers have we got coming into Forrestfield? Is it young families? I suspect young families.
Yeah, we've got a lot of young families coming back in there now. We did have about 4 or 5 years ago when they, at the same sort of time they released about the train line coming through, They also started talking about the rezoning coming through. Forrestfield Shopping Centre got bought out by Hawaiians, and then they started talking about redeveloping that. So
And they did.
They did, yeah. They've done a wonderful job. So we did have a lot of investors coming in and buying stuff up then. An example, if you bought a 1,000 square metre block on the old side of Forrestfield, you're paying about $530,000 for it. You'll probably pick up the same thing now for $430,000.
Yeah.
So
I remember having these conversations with you on some of the blocks, tussling back and forth, $1,000 to try and get it around that $430,000 price. And I also do remember seeing a lot of properties that had sold very quickly in the mid 500s 3 years earlier.
Yeah, and it's been really hard for those people to come to grips with the fact that their properties have come back that hard. And people who are now selling those properties now, same situation. They've taken a big hit on them. But what we are seeing is these not so many investors coming in and jumping in and snatching them up, which I do find amazing, but they are getting bought by just probably back to what Forrestfield used to be, with just people who want sort of bigger blocks. They know there's development opportunity there in the future. Whether they do it or they don't do it, that's to be seen. But they do actually love coming out and having room for a pool. Workshops are still really popular out there. There's heaps of big sheds.
So it's the young family making a smart buy rather than that quick developer.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of people, mine and your age, in their sort of 30s, who are saying, hey, look, let's get into the marketplace, but let's get something which we know is going to be a good future investment. Also in Forrestfield, you've got a lot of new blocks coming available through Sadler's estate, but people are tossing up. Okay, do I go and buy a 400 square metre block, or do I buy a 1,000 square metre block for similar sorts of price
and sell a 400 square metre block in the future? Yeah,
look, I know me and you, Trent, obviously think differently to other people that just want the brand new shiny thing in a 400 square metre block. I see the appeal from both sides. But if I had to make a decision on what I would be buying, I know I'd be going for that big block and land banking right now.
Well, hold that thought. That's a question I'll ask you at the end of the segment.
Yep.
I guess that makes sense. We've got the young families coming in. I would expect a lot of these young families are people who were brought up in that area by their parents who bought in the 70s and 80s. And these guys have grown up through that time, bringing the kids back into the area because they see value in it or they see renewal. Mm-hmm. Let's talk if we're going to be one of these buyers. What can we buy? Let's go from the cheapest property we can think of in Forrestfield. So it might be a unit, all the way up to those big development blocks. What are the options and the price points?
Starting points in Forrestfield, price-wise, you're looking at about $250,000. You'll get some stuff a little bit cheaper than that.
That's cheap. What do you get for that?
You'll probably get a 3x1 villa for that. You'll get some of the blocks that have been subdivided already. The original front houses, you'll pick up around I think we've got one on at $259 right now. Which is sitting on a 400 square metre block, just unrenovated front house. But, if you're starting out, it's great. You are in an up-and-coming suburb.
If you have a job, you can afford a mortgage for that, essentially.
Yeah, 100%. There's some really good buys. If you get up to about the 4 to 450 range, you'll pick up something on 800, 900, 1,000 square metres. House on it may or may not be renovated. Around about 400,000, you'll get a 3x1 or a 4x1. It probably won't be renovated, but if you get up to 420, 430, you'll get something quite nice on those blocks.
Are people making money renovating in Forrestfield? Are they even renovating at the moment?
Oh, there are some very clever people out there right now doing house flips in Forrestfield.
Wow.
People who are in the know, in real estate or just sales or house flipping, know that sex sells, right? And there's some people going out there and they make these houses look so sexy.
Yeah. And
they renovate them to such a high standard. And, I've got one lady out there right now who's absolutely making a killing doing house flipping. But she does it. It's a profession and she's really, really good at it.
And it works in Forrestfield.
It does work in Forrestfield. It works in Forrestfield, mate.
Fantastic.
You've got to pick the right property and you've got to know what you're doing. I see people do it right and make money. I see people do it wrong and not make money. But there's definitely money to be made if you do your research and pick the right property.
There are some newer estates in Forrestfield. Can you pick up a big family 4x2 that you can't subdivide just for the family? Do they exist in Forrestfield?
Yeah, they do. I live in Forrestfield in kind of called the Fruit Bowl area, or the Strawberry Way and Nectarine and Apricot.
That's the street names.
They're the street names, right? Yeah. So it's called the Fruit Bowl out there. In that area, you will pick up a family 4x2 on 600 square metres, anywhere from 450 to 500,000. Big houses as well. Some really good sized houses out there. You can pick them up cheaper. You can pick them up about 400 in that area, but the houses will be a bit tight. But if you get up to 500,000 in that area, you get something maybe 200 to 220 square metres internal living. You'd expect maybe a Ventura or a Ross North home.
Is
for
that the Western Estate close to where the new train station is going to be?
It is, yes. That is the closest area to where the train station is going to be. So although the train station probably isn't quite walking distance from there, you are still going to need to drive to it.
Ride a bicycle?
You can ride a bike, mate, if that's what you do, if that's what you're into.
Yeah.
But that will be the closest area of Forrestfield currently to the train line. That section of Forrestfield borders on Maida Vale.
I can just imagine a lot of young FIFO families who have got some good income because of the decision they've made in their lifestyle to go FIFO. Mm-hmm. They want to lock and leave. The Sparky wants to have his family in a nice, newer home in Forrestfield. That's one station from the airport. They've lived in the area their whole life. They like that. He just pops on a 2-minute Uber or a 10-minute bicycle, lock and leave, goes to his shift, comes back a week later on his bicycle, and there you are.
Go back 5 years. If we had houses for sale in Forrestfield, there was a very, very strong chance that it was a fly and fly out buying it. Because you were getting good-sized family homes, you quite often got those sheds as well. FIFOs love their toys. They generally had jet skis or Monaros or something to go along with it. High Wycombe, Forrestfield, that's who our key buyers were.
We're just waiting for that to come back, aren't we?
Please, bring that back. It was terrific. So heaps of people from New Zealand coming over and buying. Just heaps of people coming over from the East Coast. And I suppose they were just looking at the income they were making in Perth and saying, well, rather than just renting, because at the same time renting was pretty ridiculously expensive as well. A lot of people who were doing fly in, fly out were just sort of saying, let's just buy something around the airport. I think when FIFOs get off, they don't want to sit in a cab for an hour.
They want to get home as quick as possible.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of commuting. So once they get off that plane, it was 5 minutes to get to Forrestfield or High Wycombe. And yeah, they were great buyers as well because, every home open had 10 people at it. So multiple offers, and that was really popular at that time. Obviously, with Perth going the way it's gone over the last few years, the mining hasn't really been there. So a lot of those people are now actually the people who are selling up and leaving as well.
Taking a hit?
Taking a hit, yeah. I don't think there's many people in Perth, if you bought 5 years ago, you're not taking a hit if you're selling right now.
Yeah, no, and look, that's a reality for most suburbs whose median house price is underneath the Perth median house price. And that's reality if you are selling. We did an episode on this a couple of weeks ago. If you are selling in 2019 or 2018, generally it's for a reason still, because unless you are in the top third of suburbs in Perth, prices haven't gone up to a point where you're looking to make a profit. So it is a reality, and I guess that is also on the flip side, where there is chaos, there is opportunity, and buyers can identify that, and with the right information, can really pick up, in my opinion, some extremely good buyers with great growth fundamentals. And those being, we're going to talk about it now, the development options in the suburb, with the development zoning changing last February.
Yep.
We're a year in, and not much has happened. The shopping centre obviously being upgraded. People wouldn't realise that. It's quite a nice place now. And the airport link hasn't come in yet, but when it does, I think it's really going to change the face of Forrestfield, and I'm sure you agree with that. Let's talk about development options. I was a massive proponent for these changes because I'm a big believer in urban infill gentrifying a suburb. And Forrestfield, I guess half of that suburb needs gentrification, as you said, that east of Hartfield Park area. And we're just waiting for small-scale developers, I guess, to really latch onto that and start putting through Class 2 developments and triplexes and whatnot. I guess we haven't seen it being picked up as much as we'd like, but maybe you can give us a bit more of an explanation as to what's out there and what is ready to go in terms of development.
Everyone's still just holding back on it right now. There's definitely people getting in, starting to buy these properties because they know that the potential is there. A lot of properties that were rezoned have had the dual coding put in place, and there's obviously restrictions on what you can and can't do on the back blocks.
Those dual codes.
Yeah, they are. And so no one's quite prepared to jump in and take the punt on it yet. I have seen the first one in Forrestfield on Carissa Way just pop up, where they've chopped up a R20, R30 block and they're building 2-story on the back. So it's the first one I've actually seen. So it will come. It'll start happening. Those people I went and had a chat with, they're actually building it because it just works for them as an option for they're going to live in the back house. I think Dad's going to live in the front house or something. So it wasn't an investment that they've done it for. It just worked for them for their family situation.
It'll be good to see the price point, though, for us developers out there looking for hard evidence on our numbers.
Yeah, it will. It will be good. And I've said to that chap, I said, once you're done, let's come through and let's do up a price on it. So if you are looking in Forrestfield, you're still looking at that area east of Hartfield, where most of the blocks are about 800 to 1,000 square meters. You know, you're looking at triplex sites through there for a lot of them. It has happened. People have done that already. You can see the sales evidence for it. But if you were looking at doing it now, I suppose people are running the figures on it and saying, well, with the market the way it is, do they want to jump in and take the punt? I suppose where I see the real opportunity is that being at the forefront of what is happening in the marketplace. Like we are, as agents, we're right at the coalface, and you're listening to the sentiment changing in the marketplace, where a couple of years ago it was like, no, it's not time, it's coming back. That's changing. People know it's time.
Yeah, you said that to me. We have very frank conversations over the phone, Glenn, and I remember a year ago you saying to me, Trent, it's dead here. It really, there's not anything going on. And it was only a month ago when I called you to say, how's things going out there? And you said, mate, we've had our best month in a year and a half. Things are moving. It's really quite interesting. And I said to you, why is that? And you said, look, people are just more positive. Things are happening.
You can just feel it changing out there, and people are saying, well, hey, let's get in and buy these properties now. Maybe we're not going to develop it now, but by the time it starts going up and everyone knows it's time to jump in, you've missed the boat. There's 30 or 40 grand that you've dropped if you just got in at the right time. I speak to a lot of brokers as well, and they're writing more applications than what they ever have before. So it is happening. It's changing. Those blocks out there, there's three parts of Forrestfield. You've got the old part, which is the Hartfield roadside.
So that's your development specific area?
That has always been the area that if people are looking for development, that's where they've targeted. That's where you had the R25 coding already. So they said, look, we can retain and build, or we can chop it up, whatever we want to do. But they've got the options out there. Now, probably 2/3 of Forrestfield have got those options. It's only really those new housing estates where you don't have any dual coding and you can't really do any subdivision.
And you wouldn't make any money out there anyway. The prices are too high. Even if you'd have to knock the house down and you'd make no money. So those houses don't need knocking down. They're nice, good quality, fairly new houses.
That's your family-friendly sort of estate area where you want to get into. It's your Canning Vale sort of feel for Forrestfield. Yep. You just kind of go in there and, hey, we've got low-maintenance gardens, and sadly are now putting up some big playgrounds through the area as well. So that's great. You've got some real community hubs out there where families can all meet and greet.
So finally, let's have that chat about the median house price and what you do with it. I ask every agent every week. I'm sure you know this. I'm sure you're prepared, Glenn. Every week I ask our number one agent, what's the median house price in your suburb? And if you had that cash in your pocket, what would you buy?
Median house price in Forrestfield right now is just a touch under 400,000. It's about 399,000. So
that's ridiculous, by the way. That's lower than I thought.
Yeah, so you're talking 16k from the city. We're just about to get a train line. There is a lot happening in that suburb right now, and for that $400,000 point, you can go in and you can buy a retain and build subdivisible property. That's what I'd be looking at, Trent.
Good point.
If that's what I was going to, if I had the 400 in my hand, that's what I'd be buying. I'd be buying one of those properties where you live in this front house right now. 750
square meters, something like that?
Yep. So most of the blocks in Forrestfield are 700. They go up to about 750, and then when you go to the older side, they're at 900 to 1,000.
But we might not. I don't think we could afford that for 400, the 1,000 square meters.
No, the 1,000 square meters push up a little bit. They get to sort of 430 to 450 right now.
Yeah.
So if I had the 400k, I would just be looking at these 700 square meter blocks. You pick up nice corner sites for that. There's some corner sites, 700 square metre corner sites going now with really nice 3x1s on there for about... Double brick, yeah. About 340,000 you can pick them up for. So, that's amazing value. That is amazing value.
I do my numbers on Forrestfield at that price, and around that 330, I think we're still making about $80,000-$90,000 on a house, on a retain and split even. So there's money there to be made for people who choose Forrestfield as their development option.
Yeah, and the people coming and buying it now, that no one's actually coming and saying, hey, I'm going to do this right now. Like smart people, and what I love is that they're first home buyers as well. Like you've got some really savvy first home buyers out there that are getting good advice from mum, dad, whoever it might be. Guys like yourself, Trent, they come into your seminars and saying, oh, well, I could make some money in real estate. You can turn around and make 70 or 80 grand in the next couple of years.
As a first home buyer, that's another deposit.
Yeah, exactly. That just moves you on to bigger and better things.
Glen Newland, thanks a lot for your time, mate. I appreciate it. And hopefully next time we chat Forrestfield, we'll have even more positive things to say.
Awesome. Thanks, Trent.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Perth Property Show. If you've only just joined the conversation, you can catch up by heading over to our website, perthpropertyshow.com.au, subscribing to the podcast, or joining our Facebook page. Don't forget to tune in next Monday at 7 a.m. for more expert insights, local analysis, and suburb spotlights. Happy hunting!